Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a story that proves blood isn't always thicker than water, and a simple Christmas dinner can reveal a multi-million-dollar fraud. This shocking true story was sent to us by a viewer we'll call Helena. It's about her millionaire son, the wife who faked a catastrophic car crash, and the father who returned after 27 years, not for love, but for money. Get ready, because the emotional and financial stakes are dangerously high. Before we dive in, do you have a true story of family drama or sweet revenge? Send it to us. Email us your story at womenstoriess@gmail.com, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Let's start the tape on the scam of silence, Helena's counterplay. The Christmas dinner table, set with Helena's finest china and glistening silverware, usually represented a haven of hard-won peace for Helena Sterling. She watched her successful son, Adam, as he settled back into his seat, a picture of familial contentment. Across the table, Bianca, Adam's wife, maintained a radiant, picture-perfect smile. "Mom, how are you liking the new SUV?" Adam asked, his eyes shining with generous pride. Bianca said she dropped it off last week. The question detonated in the quiet dining room. Helena paused, her wine glass halfway to her lips, and replied with a bluntness that cut through the festive mood. "What car, Adam?" The effect on Bianca was immediate and dramatic. Her face, usually flushed with perfect foundation, went whiter than the fresh snow visible outside the window. Her eyes darted wildly toward Adam, a flicker of raw panic overriding her carefully maintained composure. Then the actress took over. Bianca clutched her chest with a trembling hand, letting out a sharp, theatrical gasp. She collapsed backward into her high-backed chair, the movement exaggerated and slow, as if performing for a theater audience. The expensive crystal wine glass in her hand tumbled sideways, red liquid spreading across the polished, a non-disclosed name hardwood floor like freshly spilled blood. Helena remained seated, her spine rigid. 30 years of raising Adam alone, working 3 grueling jobs after his father vanished, had sharpened her senses into a finely tuned lie detector. "She's faking," Helena said immediately, her voice low and utterly devoid of concern. "Don't move her." "Mom, she wouldn't do that!" Adam cried out, already jumping up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. He rushed around the table, adrenaline clearly overriding his common sense. "We need to get her to the non-disclosed name hospital right now." Helena allowed herself to be swept along. Someone, she reasoned, had to witness this spectacle unfold. The drive to the hospital was excruciatingly tense. Adam, desperate and full of genuine anxiety, kept glancing at Bianca in the rearview mirror, while the daughter-in-law maintained her barely conscious act, offering only controlled, pathetic whimpers. Helena watched the charade from the passenger seat, the fake vulnerability fueling a suspicion that burned hotter than any holiday cheer. At the hospital, Bianca lay on the gurney, her eyelids fluttering with an exaggerated drama that would have won her a role in a soap opera. The nurses efficiently checked her vitals, while Bianca played her part to perfection. Finally, after 20 minutes of what Helena mentally labeled medical theater, Bianca staged her grand awakening and launched into her pre-written apology. "Honey, I'm so sorry," she whimpered to Adam, reaching for his hand with deliberately trembling fingers. "I crashed the SUV that was supposed to be delivered to your mom. The roads were so slippery, and the other driver just ran into me at that intersection near Mom's house. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to stress you out. You just got back from that business trip yesterday, and you were already so tired." "Wait," Helena interrupted, the full picture finally clicking into place like puzzle pieces forming a very ugly mural. "What car?" What car did you crash? Bianca's story was not just a lie about the accident. It was an attempt to cover up the fact that the car had never been delivered. To understand the depth of this unfolding deception, Helena revisited the past. Adam was 32 now and worth approximately $8 million, thanks to a software company he built from nothing. The same boy Helena raised by working at the diner from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., cleaning offices from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., and stocking shelves on weekends after his father, Richard, abandoned them 27 years ago. Richard had walked out when Adam was 3, leaving behind a mountain of unpaid bills and scattered final notices. 3 years ago, Adam's software sale to a major corporation made the local papers. A genuine feel-good story about a local boy making it big. The article, unfortunately, included his photo and mentioned his company's valuation. Suddenly, after 27 years of complete silence, Richard showed up, wanting to reconnect. Adam, desperate for the idealized father figure he'd never had, welcomed him with open arms. 6 months after Richard's perfectly timed return, he introduced Adam to Bianca. Charming, attentive, and saying all the right things about building a family, Bianca seemed like the perfect wife. They married quickly, and Adam moved with her to a non-disclosed city, finally achieving his dream of a complete family. Now, back at the hospital, Helena watched Adam absorb Bianca's elaborate, tearful story. He was already blaming himself for putting the burden of the delivery on her. "Don't worry, Mom," Adam said, looking earnestly between his wife and mother. "I'll get you another car, a better one. The important thing is that Bianca's okay." Helena bit her tongue. Her brilliant son, a genius in code and business, had the emotional intelligence of a non-disclosed animal, e.g., a Labrador, when it came to reading people, trusting completely, and missing the obvious tricks. As they left the hospital, Helena caught Bianca's reflection in the automatic exit doors. For a fleeting moment, the helpless victim mask dissolved. The expression underneath was cold, calculating, and victorious. The look of a successful con artist. That night, while Adam fussed over his traumatized wife, Helena made a decisive commitment. If her daughter-in-law thought she could con her son, she had picked the wrong family to mess with. Helena had spent 30 years protecting Adam from the world's harshness. She wasn't about to stop now that the threat was sleeping in his bed and had access to his non-disclosed name bank accounts. The game was on. The morning after Bianca's hospital performance, while Adam was at his non-disclosed name software office generating the wealth his parasites planned to spend, Helena began her detective work. 30 years of single motherhood had instilled in her a pragmatic rule. When something doesn't add up, you do the math yourself. Bianca's story had more logical holes than a fishing net. Helena poured a strong cup of a non-disclosed coffee brand coffee, sat at her kitchen table, and put on her reading glasses. She decided to fact-check Bianca's narrative, starting with the supposed accident. She called a non-disclosed name Motors, the dealership where Adam had purchased the SUV. "A non-disclosed name Motors? This is Jake speaking," a friendly voice answered. "Hi, this is Helena Sterling. You delivered a vehicle to my daughter-in-law, Bianca Sterling, about 10 days ago. A non-disclosed SUV model," Helena stated, choosing her words carefully. "Oh, a non-disclosed SUV model. Beautiful vehicle, fully customized. Is everything okay with it?" Jake asked, genuine confusion evident in his voice. Helena paused. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. She mentioned there was some kind of accident." "Accident?" Jake's voice went up an octave. "Ma'am, I delivered that SUV personally to the address she provided. She was thrilled when I arrived, signed all the paperwork with the biggest smile I'd seen all week, even took photos with it. Said she wanted to document the moment." Photos. How convenient. Helena thought, her grip tightening on the phone. Jake continued. Actually, now that I think about it, she did ask some unusual questions about the resale value and how quickly someone could transfer ownership outside of the state. I remember thinking it was odd, since most people don't ask about selling a car they just received, but I figured maybe she was just the planning type. Resale value. Of course she did, Helena muttered, her suspicion hardening into certainty. Bianca hadn't been planning to use the gift. She had been calculating profit margins from minute one. She didn't mention any concerns about the vehicle or road conditions? Not a one. Actually, she seemed pretty excited. Made some comment about how this was going to solve some financial problems. Jake chuckled. I remember thinking it was funny. Most people buy cars to create financial problems, not solve them. I bet it was going to solve her problems, Helena concluded. The kind of problems that involve unauthorized access to other people's money. After thanking Jake and hanging up, Helena searched online for car insurance claims and accident reports, looking for any record of the phantom crash. Nothing. No police reports, no insurance claims, no record anywhere of an accident involving a white A non-disclosed SUV model in the past 2 weeks. When Adam came home for lunch, Helena attempted a careful, non-confrontational approach, meaning she avoided immediately calling his wife a lying thief. Honey, maybe we should help Bianca report the accident to insurance, Helena suggested, while he made himself a sandwich. She might be able to recover some money even if the other driver was uninsured. She already handled all that, Mom. Adam barely looked up from spreading a non-disclosed condiment mustard on his bread. She said the other driver didn't have insurance and left the scene before the police arrived. No witnesses either. One of those hit-and-run situations you hear about. How convenient. A ghost accident with a phantom driver and no witnesses. What about the police report? Helena asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Mom. His voice carried the warning tone Helena remembered from his teenage years. Bianca was traumatized by the whole experience. She probably forgot some details or mixed them up. Can you just give her a break? Sure, I'd give her a break, Helena thought grimly. Right after she gave me back my SUV and my peace of mind. That evening, Richard joined them for dinner, as he had most nights since moving back to a non-disclosed town 3 years ago, right after Adam's success hit the papers. Richard launched into a long, winding tale about his business ventures over the past 27 years, painting himself as an entrepreneurial victim searching for the right opportunity. The details were vague, the timeline fuzzy, and the entire narrative sounded like something pulled from a dusty self-help book. You know, Adam, Richard said, cutting his steak with surgical precision. I've been thinking about a non-disclosed name investment opportunity we discussed last week, the one that requires some upfront capital to secure the first phase. Adam's eyes lit up immediately. That's right, Dad. Did you need me to transfer that money we talked about? Helena nearly choked on her wine. Here was the second act of the evening's performance. How to Part a Fool from His Money, starring her well-meaning, financially naive son. Well, if you're sure it's not too much trouble, son, Richard said, with just the right amount of hesitant paternal pride. Just until the deal closes next month. Of course not. Your family. And there it was. The magic word that made Adam's critical thinking disappear faster than free samples at a non-disclosed retail store. Later, as Helena loaded the dishwasher, she glanced out the kitchen window. Bianca and Richard were standing close together on the back patio, heads bent in intense conversation. Their body language was familiar, comfortable, and conspiratorial. Not like two people who were still getting to know each other. When Adam wandered out to join them with his coffee, they instantly stepped apart, their conversation switching seamlessly to harmless topics. The weather, the neighbor's new fence. Adam's work schedule. The performance was flawless, but Helena had seen enough. The quick glances, the choreographed separation, the seamless switch in subject matter, it all screamed conspiracy. Helena finished cleaning the kitchen and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. The missing SUV, the phantom accident, the convenient timing of Richard's return, the suspicious investment opportunities, and now the obvious secret communication between her son's wife and father. Individual coincidences could be explained away, but this many red flags pointed to something much bigger than a simple car theft. How deep did this go? And how much was Adam already in? Helena knew she needed concrete information about Richard's past to convince Adam. She decided to visit her old neighbor the next morning. If anyone knew the cold, hard truth about Richard Morrison, it would be the people he left behind. The next morning, Helena drove to her old neighborhood, determined to find concrete information about Richard's past that might finally convince Adam. She knew her former neighbor, Donna Elena, who had lived on a non-disclosed street name for 40 years, had a memory sharper than glass. If anyone could deliver the unvarnished truth about Richard Morrison, it was her. The neighborhood felt smaller, the houses more worn, but Elena's small front garden was still immaculate. Helena found her kneeling among her hibiscus bushes, wearing the same style of cotton dress and sun hat she'd worn for decades. "Helena!" Elena called out, struggling gracefully to her feet and wiping dirt from her hands. "What a wonderful surprise! What brings you back to this corner of the world?" "I wanted to ask you about Richard," Helena stated, cutting straight to the chase. At her age, there was no time for extended pleasantries or softening the blow. Elena's weathered face immediately darkened, darkening like storm clouds gathering over the coastline. That man. I wondered when someone would come asking. "Sit down, Misha. You're going to need to hear this." They settled on the front porch, the same creaking, a non-disclosed name wicker chairs where Elena used to shell peas. Helena could hear the distant sound of children playing in a nearby park, a sound that painfully took her back to when Adam was small. "Richard didn't just walk out, Helena," Elena began, settling into her storytelling rhythm. "He disappeared owing 3 months' rent to the family next door. He left utility bills scattered all over that apartment like cheap confetti after the world's worst party. The power company, the water company, a non-disclosed credit card company, everyone came looking for him. He never sent money, never sent a letter, never sent anything in all those years. Not one word for over 2 decades. Elena's voice carried the weight of genuine neighborhood disappointment. "The apartment manager had to clean out that place herself. She found pictures of you and little Adam just thrown in a cardboard box like old newspapers. Some were torn, some had coffee stains on them, like they meant absolutely nothing to him." Helena felt a sickening drop in her stomach. Adam had spent years wondering if his father ever thought about him, creating elaborate fantasies about why Richard had left. Here was the brutal, heartbreaking truth. Richard had treated the tangible memories of his child like garbage. "The photos were brought to me," Elena continued. "I still have them in my house, if you ever wanted to see the evidence." Helena shook her head, unable to trust her voice. Adam didn't need the physical evidence of how little he'd meant to his father. The narrative was enough pain. "He was always a smooth talker," Elena sighed, her tone shifting to disgust. "Had big dreams, bigger mouth. Could convince you that black was white and up was down if you listened long enough. But when it came time to pay up or show up, he'd vanish like smoke. And now he's back, right after Adam's picture was in the non-disclosed news outlet 3 years ago. Funny timing, no?" Elena leaned forward, lowering her voice. "There were other rumors. My nephew works for a collection agency, And he said Richard's name popped up on their list several times over the years. Different cities, always owing money, always disappearing when things got tough. The picture was now crystal clear. Richard wasn't a man who'd made youthful mistakes. He was a professional disappointment, someone who made a career out of using people until the well ran dry. Helena thanked Elena and drove home, her mind racing. She had solid information now, but she knew Adam wasn't ready to hear it. He was too emotionally invested. When Helena arrived home, Adam was in the living room with his laptop, working. "Mom, where have you been? I tried calling your non-disclosed phone brand cell," he asked, looking up. "Just visiting old friends and taking a trip down memory lane." Helena settled into her favorite chair, studying his face. "Adam, we need to talk about your father." His expression immediately hardened, like concrete setting in the sun. "Mom, please. I know you have concerns, but he's trying. Can't you see that? He's been nothing but supportive since he came back. He abandoned you for 27 years, Adam. 27 years without so much as a birthday card or a phone call. People change, Mom." Adam's voice took on that defensive tone he used when he felt cornered. Maybe he was scared. Maybe he felt like he'd already messed up too badly to reach out. But he came back 3 years ago, and he's been trying to make up for lost time ever since. Helena looked at him, wanting to unleash the torrent of truth about the thrown-away pictures and the collection agencies, but she couldn't. He'd invested too much hope in this reunion. "Just be careful with your money, Adam," she said instead. "Don't make any big financial decisions without thinking them through twice." "Mom, I'm 32 years old. I built a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up. I think I can handle my own finances." "I know you can. I'm not questioning your business sense. I'm questioning their motives." "Their motives?" Adam's voice rose slightly in irritation. "Mom, I need this. I need to believe that families can be fixed, that people can change, that it's not too late to have the father I always wanted." There it was, the heart of the matter. Adam was trying to heal a wound that had been bleeding for 27 years, and Richard was pouring salt into it instead of helping it heal. Adam was so focused on the family he thought he could have that he couldn't see what was happening to the family he actually had. And Helena suspected this blindness was being carefully cultivated by two people who knew exactly which buttons to push. Helena knew she needed more than just testimony. She needed evidence of the conspiracy between Bianca and Richard before she confronted Adam. The next step had to be direct surveillance. The next afternoon, Helena decided it was time for some field research. She told Adam she was going shopping at the non-disclosed retail chain mall. Technically true, as she did plan to buy a coffee and a magazine. What she didn't mention was that she would be conducting her own little surveillance operation. Helena positioned herself at a table in the bustling, non-disclosed name food court, selecting a spot with a clear view of the main entrance, like a spider waiting patiently in her web. She brought a book and reading glasses to blend in as any other grandmother killing time. But her attention was focused solely on watching for familiar faces. After sitting there for over an hour, nursing an overpriced latte from a non-disclosed coffee chain, and watching teenagers make questionable fashion choices, she spotted them. Bianca walked in first, looking around nervously, as if she were meeting a drug dealer rather than her father-in-law. She was dressed casually, but still looked out of place, checking her phone every few seconds. Richard appeared about 10 minutes later, scanning the crowd with the practiced eye of someone who'd learned to watch for trouble. When he spotted Bianca, they didn't wave or show any obvious signs of recognition. Instead, they moved toward each other with the choreographed casualness of people who had done this before. They chose a table near the entrance of a non-disclosed bookstore, partially hidden behind a large decorative pillar. but with clear sight lines to the exits. Professional paranoia or guilty consciences. Helena bet on the latter. Helena moved closer, abandoning her book and pretending to browse the jewelry kiosk approximately 20 feet away. Her hearing wasn't what it used to be, but she caught fragments of their intense conversation, carried on the mall's echo. Told you we needed to be more careful. She's asking too many questions. Adam's starting to notice the patterns. Helena's heart rate spiked. They were talking about her, and they were talking about Adam noticing something. Noticing what? The financial irregularities? The timing coincidences? The way they seemed to communicate without words? She fumbled with her non-disclosed phone brand phone, attempting to get a decent photo without being obvious. Her camera skills were roughly equivalent to her ability to perform advanced calculus, but she managed to capture one blurry image that clearly showed both their faces and their intense, heads-bent-together conversation. When she returned home, Adam was in his office on a video call with clients on the West Coast. She waited until he finished, then knocked on his door with what she hoped was casual maternal concern. "Hey, honey, look what I saw at the mall today." She showed him the photo on her phone screen. Adam squinted at the blurry image, then looked at her with mild exasperation. "Mom, they're family now. Of course they talk to each other, and this photo is so blurry, I can barely tell who it is. But look at their body language. They're leaning in like they're sharing secrets," Helena countered. "Maybe they were planning a surprise for you," Adam suggested, his voice laced with forced patience. "Or maybe Dad needed advice about something and didn't want to bother me while I was working." Adam's ability to find innocent explanations for suspicious behavior was truly a gift. The kind of gift that made people easy targets for con artists. "Adam, doesn't it seem strange that your father came back right when you became successful, after 27 years of nothing?" He looked up from his computer with the tired patience of someone explaining simple concepts to a child. "Mom, I love you, but this paranoia has to stop. Dad and Bianca are both important to me, and I need you to try to accept that." Helena realized her evidence was weak. A blurry photo of two people talking wasn't exactly smoking gun material. It was more like a slightly warm BB gun that might have been fired recently. That night, Helena lay awake thinking about Adam's finances. She knew he trusted Bianca completely with their household money. As his wife, Bianca had access to their joint accounts and often handled paperwork while Adam focused on running his technology business. Adam had always been generous about delegating tasks he found boring, and financial management fell into that category. What if that trust was being systematically abused? What if those boring financial tasks included unauthorized transfers and questionable investments? Adam might not notice small amounts going missing, especially if they were disguised as legitimate business expenses or family needs. Helena made a mental note to find a way to examine Adam's financial records more closely. Not because she wanted to invade his privacy, but because she suspected his privacy had already been invaded by people with much worse intentions than hers. The problem was figuring out how to do it without Adam feeling like she was crossing a line. He was already defensive about Richard and Bianca. The next morning, Helena called her old friend Margaret, whose son was an accountant. If she was going to investigate financial fraud, she needed to understand the signs. Margaret, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to steal money from a family member without them noticing right away, how would they do it? Helena asked. Margaret, after a moment of surprise, sighed. Well, small amounts over time would be the smart way. Maybe disguised as legitimate expenses, or a non-disclosed expense type, or investments. Set up automatic transfers that the victim approves once and then forgets about. Use joint accounts where both people have access, but only one person pays attention to the details. Helena's blood ran cold. That sounded exactly like Adam's situation with Bianca. The key, Margaret continued, would be finding someone who trusts completely and doesn't like dealing with financial paperwork. Someone successful enough that small amounts wouldn't be missed immediately. And how would someone catch this kind of theft? Helena pressed. Look for patterns in the bank statements, transfers that happen regularly but don't correspond to known expenses. Check for new accounts or investments that the victim doesn't remember authorizing. Compare signatures on financial documents. Helena thanked Margaret, her mind already forming a plan. She needed to get a look at Adam's financial records, but she had to be smart. If Bianca and Richard were running a long con on her son, she needed evidence that would convince Adam before it was too late. The question was, how much time did she have before they decided they'd taken enough and disappeared? Helena decided to take a different approach and went back to the non-disclosed coffee chain several times over the next week, hoping to gather more definitive information about Bianca and Richard's relationship. Each time, she brought a different book and tried to look like any other customer enjoying a literary moment instead of conducting amateur surveillance worthy of a discount spy novel. On her third attempt, after consuming enough caffeine to power a small aircraft, Helena finally spotted them again. This time, she was more strategic about positioning herself close enough to observe but hidden behind a display of travel mugs and seasonal merchandise. The teenage barista, a girl with bright purple hair and multiple ear piercings, was wiping down tables nearby with the enthusiasm of someone who would rather be literally anywhere else. Helena decided to take a calculated risk. "Excuse me," she said, when the girl approached her table with her cleaning cloth. "That couple over there, they come here a lot, don't they?" The girl glanced over and nodded without much interest. "Oh yeah, those two. They're here pretty regularly, maybe once or twice a week. Always order the same thing. Black coffee for him, caramel macchiato for her. They tip okay, but they always seem kind of stressed about something. They seem familiar somehow. How long have they been coming here?" Helena pressed. The girl paused for a moment, her face scrunching up in concentration. "I've been working here for about 18 months, and they were already regulars when I started. So at least that long, maybe longer. They definitely have that been doing this forever vibe, you know? That timeline would put their relationship back to before Bianca even met Adam, or at least very early in their courtship," Helena realized. "Interesting. They always seem so serious when they talk," Helena commented, trying to keep her voice casual. "Yeah, they do. And they never really seem happy to see each other, if you know what I mean. Not like family or friends would be, more like..." She paused, searching for the right comparison. "Like business partners who don't particularly like each other, but need each other for something." Business partners. That phrase hit Helena like a cold slap across the face. "They always sit in that same corner," the girl continued, warming to the subject now that she had an audience. "And they're always looking around like they're worried someone might overhear them. Kind of paranoid, actually." Helena thanked her and sat back in her chair, processing this information like a computer analyzing data. Bianca and Richard had been meeting regularly for at least 18 months, possibly longer. They acted like business partners rather than family members. They chose secluded seating and watched for eavesdroppers. This wasn't the beginning of a beautiful friendship between in-laws. This was evidence of a long-term professional partnership that predated Bianca's relationship with Adam. The financial con was not a spontaneous idea. It was a well-executed, long-term operation. When Helena got home, she found Adam in his home office, signing a stack of papers with the mechanical precision of someone performing a familiar, tedious routine. The sight made her stomach clench. "What are those?" she asked, trying to sound casual rather than alarmed. "Just some financial stuff Bianca prepared for me," Adam said without looking up. "Investment paperwork, expense reports, tax documents. You know how I hate dealing with all the administrative details. Gives me a headache just thinking about it. Helena watched him sign document after document without reading them, trusting his wife's explanations completely. Adam, Helena urged, trying to keep her voice steady. Do you actually review these before you sign them? Bianca explains them to me, he said, finally glancing up with mild irritation. She's got a good head for numbers, and she knows I trust her judgment completely. Why would I need to read every line when I have someone I trust handling the details? She handles our personal finances so I can focus on growing the business. It's called division of labor. The innocent logic was heartbreaking. Adam had built his entire financial life on the assumption that the people closest to him had his best interests at heart. It was a beautiful philosophy and a terrible vulnerability. Besides, Adam added, returning to his signing, Bianca shows me the important stuff. These are just routine transfers and investment adjustments related to a non-disclosed name account. Nothing major. Routine transfers. Helena's blood pressure spiked like a rocket launching. This was the exact mechanism Margaret, the accountant's son, had described. That evening at dinner, Richard mentioned his investment opportunity again, as he had every few days for the past month. The details were always vague but promising, the timeline urgent, and the amount needed always seemed to increase slightly each time it came up. Adam, that real estate deal I mentioned is moving faster than expected, Richard said, cutting his pot roast with surgical precision. The seller wants to close by the end of next week, which means I need to move on it sooner than we discussed. No problem, Dad. Adam's response was immediate and generous. Just let me know how much and when you need it transferred. Helena watched this exchange with growing alarm that set off every internal warning system she possessed. Adam was essentially giving Richard unlimited access to his bank account, and Richard was responding with the confidence of someone who had never been denied anything. I really appreciate this, son, Richard said, his voice carrying just the right amount of gratitude and paternal pride. It means everything to me that you trust me with something this important. Trust. The magic word that made Adam's critical thinking disappear faster than free samples at a non-disclosed retail store. As Helena loaded the non-disclosed name dishwasher later, she realized she was running out of time. Richard and Bianca weren't just taking advantage of Adam's generosity. They were systematically dismantling his financial security while he signed the paperwork that made it all legal. The question was no longer whether they were stealing from Adam. The question was, how much time did she have before they decided they'd taken enough and disappeared, leaving Adam broke and heartbroken? Helena knew she could no longer rely on observation and suspicion. She needed verifiable financial proof. The problem remained: how to access Adam's financial records without him or Bianca knowing. He had already warned her about her paranoia. She decided to revisit her conversation with her friend's son, the accountant, Mr. Dennis. She arranged a confidential meeting at a neutral location, a quiet library near a non-disclosed landmark. Dennis, Helena began, placing a folder containing the blurry surveillance photo and notes on Richard's past debts on the table. I need your professional advice on how to detect fraud in an account managed by a trusting party who refuses to look at the paperwork. Dennis reviewed the material, his expression grim. Mrs. Sterling, this situation smells like a long con. The repeated urgent investment needs from Richard, the missing asset, Bianca handling all the administrative details. It's textbook exploitation. I need access to their joint account statements from a non-disclosed bank and the records for the non-disclosed name investment accounts Bianca manages. I need to look for those routine transfers Adam signs off on without reading. That's illegal without Adam's consent, Dennis stated flatly. But if Bianca is managing all the physical paperwork, Adam probably has a primary online portal set up, maybe with two-factor authentication. If she handles all the bills, she likely has access to his passwords, which means she probably wrote them down somewhere. Helena realized her best chance wasn't a digital hack, but a physical one. She had seen Bianca's filing system, a series of decorative boxes in Adam's home office. Adam trusts me implicitly with his physical workspace, Helena lied smoothly. He asked me to organize his old business files while he's at a non-disclosed name conference next week. I might find the statements in the process. Dennis sighed, understanding the tightrope she was walking. If you manage to get the statements, physical or digital, look for recurring, non-essential wire transfers to shell companies, especially any linked to Richard. Also, look for recent large asset liquidations, like selling in a non-disclosed SUV model for quick cash. Helena felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. Adam was leaving for a 4-day conference soon. This was her window. She thanked Dennis profusely, paid him a substantial consultation fee, and drove home, ready to execute the riskiest move of her life. Over the next few days, Helena observed Bianca's behavior closely. Bianca seemed more stressed than ever. She avoided direct eye contact with Helena and spent long periods on hushed phone calls, always stepping away to the back porch or the garage. The partnership was clearly under strain due to Helena's persistent presence. One evening, Richard joined them for dinner, visibly agitated. The conversation quickly turned to the urgency of his investment. Adam, I need the funds for the non-disclosed real estate deal transferred by Monday, Richard insisted, pushing his plate away unfinished. The window is closing. I need to know the capital is secured. I've signed the transfer paperwork, Dad, Adam reassured him, oblivious to the predatory tension in the room. Bianca handles the final execution and tracking. She said she sent the non-disclosed bank authorization last night. Helena watched Bianca, who maintained a facade of serene competence. Yes, darling. All transferred and confirmed. It's pending final processing. Richard, you'll see the full amount in the non-disclosed offshore account by the end of Monday. Helena knew that pending final processing meant the money was effectively gone. The window for intervention was closing, not next week, but within the next 48 hours. Later, Adam mentioned his upcoming business trip. I leave Sunday evening, Mom. I'll be back Thursday morning. Bianca immediately brightened. Oh, perfect, honey. I'll finally be able to finish clearing out your old files in the office. It's too cluttered for you to work. The realization hit Helena. Bianca planned to use Adam's absence not to organize, but to purge any incriminating paper trail before the inevitable blow-up. That night, Helena decided she couldn't wait. Adam's trip provided an opportunity, but the imminent wire transfer meant she needed the evidence now. After everyone was asleep, Helena quietly slipped into Adam's home office. The air was thick with the faint scent of ink and expensive technology. She found the decorative file boxes Bianca used. After a few tense moments of searching, she found a small, hidden metal box tucked beneath a pile of old tax returns. It wasn't locked. Inside, Helena didn't find passwords. Instead, she found a printed copy of the non-disclosed SUV model bill of sale, fully signed by Bianca, showing the car was sold 3 days after delivery to a used car dealer in a non-disclosed city name, confirming the theft. More chillingly, she found a printout of the joint bank statement. Her finger traced a series of routine transfer admin fee debits, small amounts at first, but escalating, exactly as Dennis had described. The total over the last 18 months was significant, all wired to an entity called a non-disclosed shell company, the same name linked to Richard's real estate deal. The money was leaving Adam's account like water through a sieve. Helena held the paper evidence, the cold, hard proof of a 2-person long-term con. She finally had the smoking gun. But the tragic irony was that her son was about to finalize the last, biggest financial transfer of the scheme. She had to act immediately. The next morning, Helena did not wait for Adam to go to work or for Bianca to start her daily routine of avoidance. The final large wire transfer to a non-disclosed offshore account was imminent, and the time for subtlety had passed. She waited until Adam came down for his coffee before Bianca was fully ready. Helena placed the evidence on the kitchen table: the blurry mall photo, Doña Elena's notes on Richard's past debts, the bill of sale for the SUV, and the bank statement printout highlighting the routine transfer admin fee pattern. "Adam, sit down," Helena said, her voice completely devoid of emotion, which was more alarming than anger. "We need to talk about your wife and your father, and we need to do it before the non-disclosed bank opens." Adam, sensing the shift from paranoia to critical emergency, sat down immediately, his expression morphing from tired irritation to genuine alarm as he looked at the scattered documents. "Mom, what is all this?" he asked, picking up the blurry photo first. "That," Helena began, pointing to the documents, "is the proof that the car never crashed. Your wife sold it 3 days after receiving it for quick cash. And that," she tapped the bank statement, "is proof that the accident story was just a smokescreen to distract from a much bigger 18-month-long con involving your father." Helena laid out the facts methodically, using the cold logic of a CEO presenting a hostile takeover report. 1. The missing asset. The SUV was sold for profit, not crashed. Bianca lied about the phantom accident and the ghost driver. 2. The financial drain. The routine transfers that Adam signed off on without reading were small, escalating withdrawals over a year and a half, funneled to a non-disclosed shell company, the same entity linked to Richard's urgent investments. 3. The partnership. The barista's testimony and the photo confirm Richard and Bianca have been meeting secretly since before their wedding, acting as business partners to systematically drain Adam's finances. 4. The urgency. The impending large transfer for Richard's real estate deal is the final large payout, the moment they planned to liquidate and disappear. Adam stared at the bill of sale for the SUV, the undeniable signature of his wife on it. The weight of the financial betrayal combined with the personal treachery of his father hit him with crushing force. The denial he had clung to for so long finally shattered. But the trust," Adam whispered, his eyes wide and vacant. "She's my wife. He's my father. They promised me family." "They promised you the fantasy you needed to see, Adam," Helena corrected gently, reaching across the table to cover his hand. "And they used that desperate need for family to steal from you. You built an empire on code. They built a criminal enterprise on your heart." Before Adam could fully process the gravity of the betrayal, a voice cut in from the doorway. Bianca, having heard the raised voices, stood in the doorway, her facade of perfect composure completely gone. Her eyes, usually so calculating, were wide with frantic panic. "Adam, don't listen to her!" Bianca screamed, her voice shrill. "She's jealous. She's always hated me and Richard. She's making up lies because she can't stand seeing you happy." She lunged toward the table, attempting to grab the bank statement, but Helena quickly swept the papers out of reach. "The evidence is here, Bianca," Helena stated, maintaining her calm. "The signed bill of sale for the SUV and the 18 months of wire transfers to a non-disclosed shell company are not jealousy. They are fraud. I didn't steal. I was organizing. Richard needed the money for the deal, and Adam said he trusted me." Bianca stammered, scrambling to piece together a defense. "You're crossing a line, Adam. Your mother is violating our privacy." Adam finally spoke, his voice quiet but devastating. "You sold my mother's Christmas gift for parts? Before the accident you faked? You lied to me about everything." He stood up, turning his back on Bianca. "You used my trust to funnel my money to the man who abandoned me." "It was his right! He's your father!" Bianca shrieked, playing her last card. "No," Adam said, pulling out his non-disclosed phone-brand phone, his hands shaking, but his resolve solidified by the concrete evidence. "He's a thief, and you are his partner." "Where is the money going now, Adam? The large transfer?" Helena pressed urgently. "You said it was pending processing. We have minutes, not hours." "It's an Nike transfer for a non-disclosed sum scheduled to execute at 9 a.m., Adam whispered, already typing furiously. Helena immediately directed him. "Call the bank's fraud division, not customer service. Give them the transfer ID number and tell them your signature was obtained under duress and fraud. Tell them to place a legal hold on the offshore transfer immediately, pending a police report." Adam, now working on pure autopilot fueled by shock and adrenaline, did exactly as his mother commanded. As he spoke into the phone, the urgency in his voice convincing the bank operator of the severity of the situation, Bianca stood frozen, watching the culmination of her entire scheme dissolve in a single phone call. The sound of Adam saying, "Yes, that's correct. File a freeze immediately," was the sound of the safe being slammed shut. Bianca knew the game was over. The money was frozen, the evidence was laid out, and her husband finally saw the cold, ugly truth. The moment Adam confirmed the wire transfer was frozen, Bianca realized the urgency of her situation. She didn't pause for another dramatic scene or a final plea. She shifted instantly from actress to fugitive. The large sum was blocked, meaning the entire operation was now a spectacular failure, and they had a limited window before the police arrived. "You can't do this, Adam! I'll tell them everything!" Bianca screamed, but her voice cracked with desperation, not defiance. She didn't bother trying to fight Helena for the papers. Her focus was survival. She spun around and sprinted out of the kitchen, heading directly for the master bedroom. Adam remained frozen by the kitchen table, still holding the phone, the cold reality of his betrayal paralyzing him. "Adam, call a non-disclosed police dept now," Helena commanded, already moving with purpose. "I'll call Richard." Helena knew Richard wouldn't be far, waiting for confirmation of the transfer to his non-disclosed offshore account. She grabbed the house phone and dialed his number, which she had memorized years ago out of cautious maternal habit. Richard answered on the second ring, his voice smug and anticipating success. "Did Bianca confirm the funds? Is the deal closed?" "The deal is closed, Richard," Helena said, her voice a cold blade. "The deal is closed, and you lost. The transfer is frozen, the bank is notified of fraud, and Adam is calling the police. It's over." A moment of profound, toxic silence followed on the line. Then, Richard's voice exploded into a stream of curses before the line went dead. He knew Helena didn't bluff. Helena rushed upstairs to the master bedroom. Bianca was frantically tearing open a hidden compartment in the back of her closet, stuffing jewelry, cash, and a pre-packed, non-disclosed luggage brand duffel bag with European currency into it. This was no spur-of-the-moment flight. This was a well-rehearsed contingency plan. "Where are you going, Bianca?" Helena demanded, blocking the door. "Get out of my way, you jealous old woman. You think Adam's money is the only money I have? Richard has contacts. We'll be on the other side of the world before the police finish their coffee break," Bianca yelled, shoving past Helena toward the garage door. "You won't make it," Helena warned, stepping aside but watching closely. Adam is calling the police on a fraud charge involving hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're a felon now, running on a lie? Bianca didn't reply, just disappeared through the door leading to the garage. Helena returned downstairs to find Adam still talking to the police dispatcher, his voice tight and fractured as he recited the address and the details of the financial fraud. "They're coming, Mom," Adam choked out, hanging up. His face was a mask of devastation. "I can't believe I handed them everything. I trusted them." "You trusted the possibility of family, Adam," Helena consoled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "That's not weakness, that's humanity. They exploited it." Suddenly, the house phone rang again. Adam stared at it, unable to move. Helena answered. It was a neighbor from 2 blocks down. "Helena, there's a white van speeding away from your house, driven by a man who looks exactly like Richard, and your daughter-in-law was just thrown out on the curb near the corner. He left her." The neighbor's voice was frantic. Richard abandoned his partner. The professional disappointment had struck again, cutting his losses the moment the money was frozen. Bianca was no longer useful, only a liability. Helena looked at Adam. "Richard just threw Bianca out of their getaway vehicle 2 blocks away. He's running solo." Adam looked up, a glimmer of sharp, pragmatic rage replacing the initial shock. "He left her? The woman he conspired with for 18 months? He always runs, Adam. It's his defining trait," Helena said sadly. "He runs from responsibility, from bills, and from partners when the money dries up." The sound of sirens rapidly approaching filled the street. 2 police cars pulled up to the house, followed closely by a specialized fraud investigator from a non-disclosed police depth. Helena calmly handed the bank statement and the bill of sale to the lead detective. "We have an active crime scene, a missing vehicle, and a known fugitive, Richard Morrison, driving a white, unmarked van. The victim, Bianca Sterling, is currently 2 blocks away. She can confirm the conspiracy." Within minutes, the police units mobilized. They picked up the abandoned, hysterical Bianca, who, faced with the certainty of prison time, immediately turned state's evidence against Richard, hoping for a plea deal. The full weight of the investigation, now armed with Bianca's confession, focused entirely on tracking down Richard and recovering the funds he had already managed to siphon off. Adam, sitting in the ruins of his perfect family fantasy, was left with a devastatingly clear-eyed view of the people closest to him. His father was a career criminal, and his wife was his accomplice. Helena sat beside him, the silence profound. The financial threat was neutralized, but the emotional damage was immense. The next step wasn't about money, it was about healing. The house settled into a profound, unnatural silence after the police cars and the forensic team departed. Adam was left standing by the kitchen table, the epicenter of the morning's chaos, staring at the phone. He had just finished providing his official statement, his voice mechanical and hollow as he recounted the 18-month-long deception orchestrated by his wife and father. Helena watched him, the sharp clarity of her detective work replaced by the deep ache of a mother watching her child endure crushing pain. The financial damage was reversible. The emotional damage was permanent. "They took advantage of my biggest weakness," Adam finally said, his voice barely a whisper, echoing in the sterile quiet. "Not my money, Mom. My need. My need for Richard to be something other than the man who threw my baby pictures away." Helena moved toward him, gently steering him toward the living room couch, away from the scene of the betrayal. "You were not weak, Adam. You were human. They targeted your capacity for hope. That's their crime." The fraud investigator from a non-disclosed police depth had assured them that the largest transfer, the non-disclosed sum for the real estate deal, was successfully frozen. The smaller, routine transfers, the money siphoned off over 18 months, were likely gone, dispersed into various shell accounts. "We need to start the audit," Helena stated, adopting a practical tone to draw Adam back to the present. "We need to go through every statement for the last 2 years. We need to identify every admin fee transfer to that a non-disclosed shell company and trace where the money went. We need to know the full extent of the loss before the insurance claim." Adam nodded numbly, the pragmatic side of his nature slowly asserting itself. He walked into his home office, the place where he had unknowingly signed away his security, and pulled out his files. As they began the meticulous, painful process of reviewing the damage, Adam pointed to a particularly large withdrawal disguised as a software license renewal. "I asked Bianca about this one last month," Adam recalled, rubbing his temples. "It was the only one I even noticed. She gave me a long, complicated explanation about a non-disclosed tech company compliance fee. I signed it immediately. I didn't want the headache." "That's how the con works, honey," Helena murmured, running her finger down the list of transfers. "They make the truth so complicated that you choose the simple lie. They weaponized your aversion to bureaucracy." Adam leaned back, the color draining from his face as the realization deepened. And Richard? Richard was the bait. He was the distraction. The emotional need was so loud, I couldn't hear the financial alarm bells. They worked through the afternoon. The total loss from the routine transfers amounted to nearly $500,000, a significant sum, but recoverable. The greatest loss was the trust Adam had so desperately given away. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the living room, Helena paused the audit. She looked at the weary, wounded man beside her, no longer the multimillionaire CEO, but the 3-year-old boy whose father had disappeared. "We stop for today, Adam," Helena announced. "The money can wait. You cannot." Adam looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for the first time that day, the anger was directed not at Richard or Bianca, but at himself. "I feel like an idiot, Mom. A successful idiot. You knew. You saw it immediately. Why didn't I listen?" "Because you wanted something I couldn't give you," Helena said simply. "A complete family. That desire made you vulnerable. Your business brilliance is about logic and data. Your heart is about connection and history. They found the single gap in your code." Helena reached out and took his hand, her touch grounding him. "I didn't listen to you, but you acted immediately on my instruction this morning. You didn't pause to doubt. You executed the freeze without hesitation. That is the kind of trust that matters. That is why we stopped them." She emphasized the positive outcomes. The main transfer was frozen. Bianca was in custody, cooperating and facing felony charges for fraud and theft. And Richard, the primary target, was a known fugitive whose picture was now circulating among law enforcement agencies across the country. "They are done, Adam. They will never touch your money or your life again," Helena promised. "And the woman who was willing to sell the very idea of family for a quick profit. She is already betrayed and abandoned by her co-conspirator. Justice in this case is already beautifully poetic." "What about Richard?" Adam asked, his voice hardening. "He's running. He's always run," Helena repeated, firm in her conviction. "He is back to owing, to looking over his shoulder, to being nothing more than a ghost on a collection agency's ledger. He lost the $8 million golden ticket you represented. His life is over. Yours is not." Helena stood up. "Tomorrow, we call Mr. Dennis and your corporate lawyers. Tonight, we order terrible takeout from a non-disclosed restaurant, and we watch an old movie. We mourn the loss of a fantasy, but we celebrate the rescue of reality. You have a mother who loves you, a life you built with your own hands, and you are financially safe. That is the only family that counts. Adam managed a small, genuine smile, the first sign of the resilient man beneath the shock. The process of healing had begun. The weeks following the arrests were a blur of legal and financial action. Adam filed for divorce from Bianca immediately on the grounds of criminal fraud and conspiracy. The process was swift and clinical, aided by the massive body of evidence Helena had uncovered. Bianca, hoping for a lighter sentence, cooperated fully with the police, providing every detail about Richard's operations, shell companies, and escape routes. The divorce court proceedings held in the non-disclosed county courthouse confirmed the worst. The marriage was entirely transactional, a calculated means to an end. Bianca's lawyers made a half-hearted attempt to argue for spousal support, but the judge, presented with the overwhelming evidence of financial fraud and the theft of the SUV, dismissed the claim and granted Adam the annulment based on extreme duress and material misrepresentation. Bianca was formally charged and awaited trial, facing a long sentence for her role in the financial conspiracy. The audit continued, revealing the depth of the deception. The total loss amounted to a non-disclosed smaller sum, the routine transfers over 18 months. Fortunately, due to Helena's quick actions, the vast majority of Adam's assets remained secure. Adam implemented immediate drastic changes to his life and his business. He transferred all his financial accounts to a new institution, the non-disclosed high-security bank, and set up multi-layered security protocols. He hired a new personal finance manager, a fiercely meticulous woman recommended by Mr. Dennis, who reported directly to Helena as an unofficial secondary auditor. The greatest change, however, was in Adam's perspective. His initial devastation gave way to a cold, hard resolve. He learned to trust his mother's intuition over his own desperate need for acceptance. "I need to protect myself from my own wishful thinking," Adam told Helena one evening, after they had spent hours finalizing his new estate plans, which included substantial trust funds for his mother. "I was blind because I wanted to be seen. You weren't. You saw the truth the moment she claimed the car crashed." "I saw what your father was capable of," Helena corrected, looking through the glass window at the falling rain. "And I knew you deserved better. We survived his abandonment once, Adam. We weren't going to lose everything to his greed a second time." Adam, who was now 33 years old, stood up and went over to the window, watching the street where the police cars had converged. "I owe you everything, Mom. I wouldn't have anything left, not my company, not my house, not my sanity, if you hadn't fought for me." "You don't owe me, Adam," Helena smiled, a genuine warm smile for the first time in months. "You are my legacy. Protecting you is the only payment I'll ever need." The final chapter of the conspiracy came to a close months later. Richard was eventually apprehended by federal marshals in a non-disclosed western state, attempting to cross the border with a forged passport and the last of the cash stolen from Adam. He was brought back and faced a battery of charges, not just for the conspiracy against Adam, but also for years of unpaid debts, outstanding warrants, and tax evasion. Richard sent Adam a final, desperate handwritten letter from the prison, attempting one last, pathetic manipulation. He blamed Bianca, blamed Helena, and blamed Adam for his lack of understanding. Adam read the letter, his face devoid of emotion, and handed it to his lawyer to be used as further evidence of Richard's criminal character. The emotional hold Richard once had was finally and completely broken. Adam donated the recovered cash from the sale of the SUV to a local charity that supports victims of elder fraud, turning the negative into a positive legacy. He bought Helena a new car, a different model, this time a hybrid, from a non-disclosed car maker, which he personally delivered and registered in her name. Life settled back into a quiet, functional rhythm. Adam focused intently on his business, occasionally flying out for corporate meetings, but his priorities were irrevocably changed. He no longer sought a ready-made family. He cherished the real one he had. Helena remained his rock, his confidant, and his unofficial chief of security. They established a new, healthier pattern of communication. Complete transparency, open books, and unconditional honesty. The trauma of the scam became a quiet reminder of resilience. Helena had saved her son's fortune, but more importantly, she had saved his capacity for genuine connection. She had traded a perfect Christmas dinner for a raw, messy, and infinitely more valuable truth. The silence of the scam had been broken, and the sound of their shared future, built on honesty and true family love, was finally clear. Wow. The sheer coldness of Bianca and Richard using Adam's vulnerability is just staggering. Helena's action, freezing that final wire transfer, saved her son from financial ruin. It's a powerful lesson in trusting your gut, especially when family is involved. What would you have done if you saw that level of betrayal unfolding? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And remember, we need your stories. If you have a true jaw-dropping tale of life, betrayal, or an incredible fight back, we want to share it with our community. Send your story to womenstoriess@gmail.com. We'll see you in the next video.